What better place to start our licensed video game adventure than with 1991's Michael Jackson Moonwalker. I'm aware this came out in 1990 in America, but I think it was early January 1991 in Europe. There's multiple different versions of this game. The Mega Drive version I think is probably the most popular and most well known. However, looking it up, I was aware of the fact that there was an arcade version, which is very different. But there's also a home computer version, which was made by, I think, Emerald Software. And I think Key Punch Software was also mentioned, Key Punch Studios was mentioned when I looked it up. Which sounds kind of interesting, because I've never played those versions, but this one I certainly did play at the time, possibly a few years after it came out. The premise is quite simple, so as you can see it's a side-scrolling kind of, I would call it a brawler, but there's not really a whole lot of fighting going on. And your objective is literally to walk around rescuing the kids that you can find, modelled basically on the Smooth Criminal section of the movie. And yeah, you essentially just wander through, kicking bad guys, opening doorways, stepping on pianos, and rescuing the kids from various parts of the level. I mean, it seems very simple as you start, is that they've all just sit on the floor, but they start hiding behind doors. You know, there's a section later on in this set of stages where they're hiding in windows. So they go to some length to actually hide the kids, and as the game goes on, it gets harder and harder to actually find them, which can be infuriating. Luckily, this level's pretty easy. It's really, you know, in today's day and age, it would be a tutorial, but they managed to do it in-game without interrupting the flow of gameplay at all. So then when you rescue all the kids, Bubbles points you in the right direction. He's telling me to go down and right, so I'm going to follow what he says. And you'll get a little boss encounter, but not before you don't see Mr. Big, with his incredibly big text. So I haven't really talked about the controls, so I'm kind of mainly mashing on C and B at the moment. So C is your jump button, B is your attack button. You get these little sparkly kicks and punches. The little health bar at the bottom is kind of your magic gauge, I guess. Plus your health gauge. If that gets too low, you essentially lose the ability to do any magic, which makes your attacks a lot less rangeful, because as you can see, those sparkles actually have quite a big range as opposed to his kick or his punch. You also have the A button, which is the magic button, which I can demonstrate once we get enough enemies on the screen. Here we go. You do a little spin, shoot the hat, and that destroys everybody. If you hold that button down all the way, which we'll do in the boss encounter, I don't want to waste it now, you can get the entire screen of enemies to dance, which is, you know, it's a Michael Jackson game. It's a strange thing, but why would you expect anything else from a Moonwalker game? That's possibly the most crazy thing about this game, is that considering the property that it came from is a very weird thing. I mean, this very clearly is connected to the Smooth Criminal kind of music video that's in the middle of Moonwalker. Actually, considering I watched a bit of it last night, a lot towards the end of Moonwalker. I seem to remember the first time I watched it after being a small kid, which was probably only about 5 years ago, being amazed how long it actually took to get to Smooth Criminal. I mean, the movie is such a weird hodgepodge of ideas. The first, I want to say 20 or 30 minutes is, you know, there's a live music video, and then what must be 15 minutes of montage clips of his career. Like, just absolutely painful levels of kind of montage and nostalgia. Honestly, like, I don't know why you'd start. Well, I know why you'd start a movie like that with it, but it's just such a weird film, because it kind of doesn't stick together as a whole thing. It's all of these weird short films. That there's a version of the Bad music video with him being played by a kid. There's a Leave Me Alone music video, which is, I think, my most memorable section of this film. Smooth Criminal, I think, is the most impressive part of the film. Easily the most, the highest budget. But then you just end up with these weird chase sequences around, you know, movie studios, and I'm screwing this up. Incredibly strange film that I'm eternally grateful this game came out of, because if it didn't, I don't know if there'd be any redeeming qualities whatsoever to Michael Jackson's Moonwalker. A strange thing. Alright, let's hold down the A button. As you see, I used a half a health bar, so you kind of have to use it sparingly. But he does a little dance, so it's hard to begrudge him for that. And those dance sequences change every single time, it's not the same one. Which I was incredibly impressed by. There you go, so I've run out of magic now, so now my punches are actual punches. Luckily I'm at the end of the level, so it doesn't matter. So there's a couple of other game mechanics to this. The ability to turn into a massive, ridiculous robot doesn't come on until later in the game. And different types of enemies. I mean, we've pretty much just seen nothing but blue and grey suited guys. Which is, you know, it's still trying to get you used to the game kind of mechanics at this point. So I actually think this is one of those weird games where the longer you play, the worse it gets, which is, it sounds kind of negative and kind of strange, but I think it's one of those games where the simple mechanics of the first couple of levels work really well, and as they make it more complicated, it doesn't actually gain anything. In fact, it just gets more and more confusing. So this is essentially, let's talk about the structure. So they've got 3 levels per stage. This is the 3rd level of Club 30, which is the, again, Smooth Criminal level. Stage 2 is out in the street, which again, the movie spent some time out in the street, so that's perfectly reasonable. The 3rd level is laughingly called Woods, but as far as I can tell, seems to be a haunted graveyard, because you spend most of your time fighting zombies. I don't remember that part of the... seems to be just pulling from Thriller at that point. So after that you go into a cavern system, which I sort of remember from the film, but it's not the most memorable environment ever. I was going to say, I hate that mechanic. When the girl gets in your way and you have to kick them. It's not cool, Moonwalker. And the last level seems to be some sort of, you know, evil lair base. I genuinely didn't understand what that was, but at that point you're fighting guys with guns, you're fighting lasers that are on the walls, there's teleporters. It's just absurdly complicated. I know some people will say, it's easy, but I think in terms of, you know, what makes this game actually enjoyable, I think it is just going around and, you know, kicking shit and generally having an entertaining time. See, this is... Can't jump over her. You literally have to kick her. I can't think of any other way to get rid of her. Not cool. I'm not sure Michael Jackson would have thought that cool, but he signed off on this, so I guess he must have known. Anyway. Yeah, I think in terms of, I mean, this game came out, like I said, 1990, 1991. So it's still very early in the Mega Drive era, and I think it still holds up surprisingly well. I think for me the highlight really is the Michael Jackson tunes, because I think they're rendered so brilliantly with the Mega Drive sound chip. If there's, I mean, I know the Mega Drive sound chip was never particularly subtle or able to do a lot of stuff, and the SNES was certainly more capable, but for kind of grindy bass, synth sounds and drums, the Mega Drive, that FM synthesis chip was something else. Alright, so this is the end of stage 3, so you get a little boss fight, which in this case is not too tricky, but they start ramping them up later on in the game. Alright, let's go outside. So this point, it introduces the ability to become a robot, which is a strange mechanic, because you essentially have to rescue a certain child and then catch a falling star, and that will turn you into a robot. And it's temporary. It doesn't really mean you can play the rest of the level as a robot. You just get a 30-second segment where you can fly around and shoot lasers. So can't really complain about that. This is also where extra enemies come in. You kicking dogs in the face, which again, we wouldn't have thought Michael Jackson would be cool with that. Michael Jackson doesn't seem to really care about anything. They do start and get into these multiple layer levels as well. There's a lot of jumping as opposed to, you know, like the previous level. Wasn't a lot going on really in terms of level design. Ah, stupid explosives are really irritating. I believe that's a dog. I think I know who the last one is. The guy with a gun. So at this point in the movie, I think, is where Joe Pesci is wandering around the street looking for Michael Jackson and sending an army of SWAT guys after him. Which I thought happened before Smooth Criminal, but again, I wouldn't be worried about this this game being honest and true to the movie, because I really don't think the movie is that much good. I'd much prefer to take an inspiration rather than try and follow it. Yeah, those dance beats are pretty good. Nice, time bonus. Nailed that level. Alright, let's go try and turn into a robot. I think in this level I know how to do it. It loads in. Yeah, as you can see, this is a parking garage, so the glamorous environments never stop. So I think I open this yellow car here, rescue her, and then wait for the fallen star, and then we get some amazing rendered graphics to turn you into a robot, which may well be better than the CG that was in the film. It's been a while since I've seen it, but I don't remember it being a masterpiece of computer graphics. It turns into like a crazy Gundam game. Kind of makes you wish the rest of the game was like this. Because I mean, the game's already pretty ridiculous. It's just crazy to me that a game like this, which essentially is a licensed product, has this much depth. It's a weird anomaly. Normally with these kind of side-scrolling brawlers based on TV shows or movies, they're very, very basic. You know, usually because they're built very quickly and, you know, built with a style guide. You have to, the whole cast to do these things. You can't have Marvel characters kicking things in the face. Michael Jackson, apparently, you can. It's perfectly acceptable. Doing this wrong way around, really, because I know I'm going to have to go back to the top of the boss fight, but never mind. I wanted to become a robot as early as possible. There was also a version of this for the Master System, which I've sort of dabbled with. It seems quite similar, actually. It doesn't seem like a vast departure from the Mega Drive version. There was also, weirdly enough, there was an arcade release of Michael Jackson Moonwalker, which was not like this at all. Oh god. Can't die. It's too embarrassing. I think you get a full health bar when you find the last kid. I wonder. Yeah, there was an arcade game which actually was nothing like this. It was kind of like a 3/4 view, isometric, kind of shootery brawler. There we go, full health. And all the enemies disappear. Which I seem to remember, I think I've seen some footage of. I don't think I've ever played it, or never played it for more than, you know, sort of 5 minutes. It's a very strange thing. You know, I've never seen an arcade machine in the wild. I'm not sure how kind of popular it was at the time. But it's an interesting thing. I kind of want to come back and revisit both the arcade version and also the home computer versions, because there was a game not built by Sega that effectively did the same sort of thing, basing on the Moonwalker movie, but for kind of like the Amiga and various other platforms. I think it wasn't that far off this. I think, you know, the tail end of the 80s at least. I mean, the other thing about this game is that it came out, what, 1990, 1991? And the movie was 1988, so There's a good couple of years between the movie coming out and this game being available. I also don't know, something I probably should have pointed out before the start of this level, I don't know how you would ever decide that you need to do the magic spin on top of the grate to open it. Like that. I don't know how you would ever figure that out. I literally sat here for, you know, 5-10 minutes the other night trying to do that. Could not figure out for the life of me how to do it. Ah, explosives. So as you can see, like the levels get more and more complicated. You end up having to rescue more and more kids as the levels go on, and it throws more enemies at you. And enemies get more intelligent, or just more annoying actually. This level's not too bad. What you'll see in the next set of stages is probably my least favourite enemy in the entire game. This explosive seal's so cheap. I do like Michael Jackson's animation when he opens car doors. Kind of like he's like a car salesman. Look inside. Oh, explosive. Yeah, you're supposed to be able to know to make that jump as well. Makes me laugh. Alright, boss level 2. Also, don't touch Mr. Big on this screen because you'll certainly die. That was an incredibly poorly fought boss fight. Alright, good music now. For stage 3-1. Woods. I can't help but think that was the only thing they could think of that would fit on that screen, because Haunted Graveyard. This is a haunted graveyard, isn't it? It's not... What woods have you ever seen that look like this? I know most of the woods in my local area have tombstones in them. And then you find, yes. So these are my least favourite enemies in the entire game, the zombies, because A, they take more than one shot, and B, they fly all over the bloody screen. I forgot to mention that you can press up on the D-pad to do that. Which is good. Have a look at this bush! The music in this game really is... I mean, I kind of like the gameplay, and I think it's a pretty good looking game for 1990 Mega Drive graphics, but the music in this game is so good. The walk animation is pretty good as well, I think. There you go. You can do moonwalking. Well, I didn't realise moonwalking would break the bridge. It's a bit unfortunate. I think the moonwalking on this level will actually get you a special set of music that you wouldn't get anywhere else. Which is very exciting. Do it here. Yeah, Thriller Dance. Which is a shame because it means you don't get to hear Thriller at any other point in the game. Now I have to fight these zombies, which is good. Wow, blasting through these levels. It's funny if you play through Moonwalker, say 3 or 4 times in the last 4 or 5 days, you tend to get a lot better at it. Oh, I mean that's kind of Michael Jackson Moonwalker. There's not a whole lot more to show. The last level is some sort of flight sim, but in my current playthroughs I haven't made it that far. And to be honest, I think I found the later levels, especially stage 4 and 5, to be more of a chore than enjoyable. Oh, always missed that falling star on that level. As you see, the levels get more and more complicated. They throw way more enemies at you, and there's a lot more places for the kids to hide. To the point where you'll go through a level and realise you missed one, and then you'll discover, 10 minutes later, that they were hidden behind some shrubbery that you didn't know you could open. Very irritating. So that's Michael Jackson's Moonwalker. I think that's kind of shown you what that game is and was. I think it still holds up. I think it's still a well-made game. It's it's not very long. It's only 5 stages, but stage 4 and 5 are difficult enough that they'll keep you going. Yeah, it's kind of a shame because you know that they're not going to make another one of these, and they're not going to make a remake of it because I mean, where is the Michael Jackson estate at this point? I don't know how you would even license something like this. And I don't think Sega are in a kind of HD remaster kind of mood. They don't seem to be making those sorts of things anymore, so kind of a shame. But either way, I kind of, it's a shame really starting this this feature with something so good, because I know that whatever comes next will be a lot worse than this. But let's hope that next time we can find something just as good out of a licensed video game.